The first constellations were simple designs of stars that were drawn by dreamer humans thousands of years ago. At that time, knowledge about stars was associated with practical applications. Passengers and caravans used stars and constellations to navigate at night. The rising and setting of these celestial bodies acted as a simple clock, and their annual movement in the sky formed the yearly calendar. The sky was also a picture book in which storytellers could visualize the figures of mythical gods, heroes, and monsters. All civilizations had their constellations based on their culture. The constellations we use today include the 48 constellations known to the ancient Greeks 2,000 years ago. In the 16th and 18th centuries, astronomers defined new constellations that the ancient Greeks could not observe, especially in the southern hemisphere. In the 1920s, the International Astronomical Union, the governing body of the astronomical world, recognized 88 constellations that covered the entire sky from pole to pole without any distance. Although computer-controlled observatories and space telescopes do not need to meet the targets of the first constellations, they can still be used as a useful way to identify parts of the sky where celestial bodies are located. The constellations also keep us in touch with those ancient observers who first looked up at the sky and tried to understand the world around them. People have looked at the sky for thousands of years. Many cultures have linked the designs they distinguish between thousands of visible stars to their myths and legends. Today, the International Astronomical Union recognizes 88 constellations. Together, these constellations form a complete sphere around the Earth. The new system of constellations is based on the 48 statues described by Ptolemy, the ancient Greek astronomer. Other ancient civilizations and cultures also imagined patterns in the sky and arranged them in their myths and legends. But today, only the ancient Greek system is recognized. With the advent of the 16th century and the efforts of sailors to navigate and explore the southern hemisphere, completely new areas of the celestial sphere were mapped, and new constellations were defined. We want to show you a brief history of mapping the universe. Be with us until the end. About 3,000 years BC. Sumerian and Babylonian astronomers observed the sun's and stars' annual motion and designed the first constellations. The observations of these astronomers are recorded in cuneiform on clay tablets. About 400 BC. The Greek astronomer Eudoxus, in his book Phenomenon, introduced the Western world to the constellations of the Babylonian civilization and modified this system. The original version of the book has long since disappeared. Still, another Greek scholar, Brahe, translated the book into poetry, later translated into Latin. About 160 BC. The Greek astronomer Hipparchus, compiling the first large catalogue of ancient stars, classified 850 stars in front of 40 constellations. Hipparchus also divided the stars into 6 levels of lighting. Around the year 150 AD, the Greek astronomer Ptolemy wrote a summary of Greek astronomy in the form of his book Mathematical Compilation. The book, later called Almagest, contains a revised catalogue of Hipparchus and 48 constellations. Until 1500 years later, Western astronomers based their observations on this book. About the year 650 AD. The oldest surviving map of the stars dated back to the 7th century AD in China and was drawn on a paper scroll. The Chinese constellations were smaller and more numerous than the Western constellations, with 250 Chinese constellations and only 48 Western constellations. Chinese astronomers also listed hundreds of stars more than the Greeks. Year 964 AD. Abd al-Rahman al-Sufi, an Iranian astronomer, wrote an updated version of Almagest and called it the Book of Fixed Stars. This book contains illustrations for each constellation depicted in the Islamic style, an advantage Almagest lacked. The year 1515 AD. German painter and theorist Albrecht Dürer published the first printed sketch of Europe based on Ptolemy's catalogue of the Almagest book. Half of this map shows the zodiac and the northern constellations, and the other half shows the southern sky. 1598 AD. The Danish astronomer Tycho Brahe published a new and more accurate catalogue of 1,000 stars, which is 10 times more accurate than the catalogue in Ptolemy. Tycho Brahe used surveillance tools with the naked eye because the telescope had not yet been invented. 1592 to 1612 AD. Petrus Plancius, a Dutch surveyor and astronomer, introduced 15 new constellations, 12 of which were in the farthest reaches of the southern hemisphere. An area of the sky that was invisible to Europe. The maps included stars drawn by Dutch sailors such as Peter Dierschonkaiser and Frederick D. Huttman. The year 1603 AD. German amateur lawyer and astronomer Johann Bayer published the first atlas of the whole sky entitled Uranometria. He assigned a page to each of Ptolemy's 48 constellations and described the 12 new southern constellations on another page. 1679 AD. British astronomer Edmund Halley traveled to the island of St. Helena to make the first accurate mapping of the southern sky. His catalogue contains 341 stars and a new constellation called Charles Oak. Of course, this constellation was not accepted by other astronomers. 1690 AD. Polish astronomer Johannes Hevelius published a new star atlas and a catalogue of 1,500 stars much larger and more accurate than Tycho Brahe's catalogue. Hevelius introduced 10 new constellations, 7 of which are in use today. 1725 AD. John Flamsteed, the first royal astronomer of England, completed the preparation of the first large catalogue of stars observed with the help of a telescope. This catalogue was published with the Atlas Coelestis after the death of Flamsteed and was used as a standard reference for a century. 1752 AD. French astronomer Nicolas-Louis de Lacaille observed the southern sky from the Cape of Good Hope, compiled a catalogue of about 2,000 stars, and published it along with a map of the stars. He introduced 14 new constellations that astronomers still recognize today. 1801 AD. The largest old star atlas was published in 1801 by Johann Alert Bode, director of the Berlin Observatory. Called Uranography, this atlas contains 17,000 stars in 100 constellations. 5 of these constellations were discovered by Johann Alert Bode himself. From 1922 to 1930. The newly formed International Astronomical Union covered the entire celestial sphere with a limit of 88 official constellations, defining the official boundary between the constellations. No new constellations have been described since. 1989 to 1993. The European Space Agency's Hipparchus satellite was launched in honor of the famous ancient Greek astronomer. The satellite orbited Earth to catalogue more than 100,000 stars. The position and brightness of these stars in this catalogue have been measured with unprecedented accuracy. 2013 AD. The European Gaia spacecraft was launched. In a 5-year, perhaps more extended, mission, the spacecraft will finally measure the distances and movements of more than 1 billion stars to produce a three-dimensional map of the Milky Way.